Hugo Pierce adjusted his tie in the bathroom mirror, studying the reflection of a man who had mastered hiding in plain sight. At 42, he carried a calm confidence born from surviving nightmares most only read about in books. His dark hair was flecked with distinguished silver streaks, and his steel-gray eyes held depths his wife, Emma, had never cared to explore. "Hugo, you're going to be late for the board meeting," Emma called from their bedroom, her voice carrying the practiced concern of someone who had perfected the art of appearing attentive. Hugo smiled to himself. After 10 years of marriage, Emma still believed she was married to a simple construction company owner. She had no idea that the man who kissed her goodbye every morning had once been one of the most effective covert operatives in modern history. Their company, Pierce Construction, occupied a gleaming 30-story building in downtown Manchester. Hugo had built the business from scratch after retiring from a life he rarely mentioned. The skills he'd honed, strategic thinking, risk assessment, reading people, were not just business tools but instincts sharpened through years of operations that officially never existed. Morning, Mr. Pierce. Rebecca Lamb, his assistant, greeted him as he entered the executive suite. "Quarterly reports are on your desk. Also, your 2 p.m. with the City Planning Committee has been pushed back to 3:30. Hugo nodded, settling into his chair with a grace that only years moving through shadows could teach. Pierce Construction wasn't just about erecting buildings. Under Hugo's direction, they built fortresses, safe houses, structures with purposes far beyond their facades. His latest project, a warehouse complex on the outskirts of the city, had been approved months ago, but today's meeting was about minor permit adjustments. What the committee didn't know was that the warehouse was designed to make a military engineer proud. His phone buzzed. A message from Emma. *, don't forget dinner with Dad tonight. He's looking forward to seeing you. *, Hugo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Samuel Collins, Emma's father, was a man who always made him uneasy. The man claimed to own several import-export businesses, but Hugo's trained eye saw the truth beneath the surface. Expensive suits that failed to conceal old knife scars, conversations that halted when he entered a room, and that subtle dominance of someone who was less a boss and more a kingpin. Still, Hugo played the role of the oblivious son-in-law perfectly. He laughed at Samuel's jokes, accepted his patronizing business advice, and never let on that. He read the man like an open book. The afternoon meeting passed smoothly. As Hugo drove back to their Georgian-style mansion in the affluent suburb of Didsbury, he reflected on the delicate balance of his double life. Emma awaited him in the marble-floored foyer, looking radiant in a sleek black dress that likely cost more than a month's rent for most people. Her blonde hair was impeccably styled, and her blue eyes sparkled with a warmth Hugo had long since learned to question. "How was your day, darling?" she asked, rising on her toes to place a kiss on his cheek. "Productive," Hugo replied, studying her face with the same care he once reserved for detecting life-or-death lies. "Oh, the usual lunch with the girls, a bit of shopping." Emma smiled, perfectly rehearsed. "Dad's really looking forward to tonight. He says he has some exciting business opportunities to discuss with you." Hugo nodded, keeping his expression neutral. Samuel Collins's business opportunities were always carefully disguised attempts either to compromise him or pull him into the family's more questionable dealings. So far, Hugo had deflected these overtures with a mix of apparent naivete and careful misdirection. As they prepared to leave, Hugo caught Emma's reflection in the hallway mirror. For a split second, when she thought he wasn't watching, her expression shifted, her loving wife mask slipping to reveal something cold and calculating. The look of someone planning violence. And Hugo recognized it all too well. The perfect life was about to crack. The Collins penthouse towered above Manchester's skyline, occupying the top 2 floors of the prestigious Ashton Tower. Hugo had been here many times before, but tonight carried a weight he couldn't shake. As the elevator ascended, he noticed Emma's subtle tension. The way her fingers drummed nervously against the strap of her designer handbag, the trace of a furrow in her brow. "You seem nervous," Hugo said softly. That Emma's lips curved into a bright, practiced smile. "Doi, I suppose I am just excited. Dad's been working on something big lately. He wants to bring you in as a partner for some projects." The elevator chimed, doors sliding open to reveal Samuel Collins' lavish foyer. At 72, Samuel was still an imposing figure. Tall, silver-haired, with a presence that commanded the room without effort. He greeted Hugo with warmth that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hugo, my boy," Samuel said, his handshake firm and measuring. "Looking prosperous. Construction's treating you well?" "Can't complain," Hugo replied smoothly, matching the grip. Dinner unfolded in Samuel's private dining room, panoramic windows showcasing the glittering city and the choppy waters of the Manchester Ship Canal beyond. The table was set with crystal and fine china. Emma's black silk dress shimmered under the chandelier's light, hugging her curves with elegant precision. Her stilettos clicked softly as she moved, carrying herself with the ease of someone accustomed to being watched. The conversation skimmed over surface topics: city politics, business trends, Emma's charity endeavors. But Hugo's trained ear caught the undercurrents. Samuel's casual mentions of associates with regulatory issues weren't random, and his pointed questions about the warehouse project seemed designed to probe. Emma's responses were impeccably timed, rehearsed even, as if the two had practiced this dance. When dessert arrived, Samuel leaned in. "You know, Hugo," he began, voice low, "I think it's time we had a real discussion. Not just family dinners. There are business opportunities, real ones. I've told Emma how brilliant you are with logistics and planning. She's convinced you'd be invaluable to our import operations." Hugo let a flicker of flattered interest cross his face. "I appreciate the confidence. What kind of operations are we talking about?" Samuel's smile was predatory. "Goods that require discretion, special handling, logistical challenges for a man with your skills. Profitable, but requiring absolute trust and a willingness to bend some rules." Hugo paused, letting the silence stretch. Emma's hand found his under the table, her grip tightening just a fraction. "I'd like to know more," he said finally. "I'm interested." Samuel nodded, satisfaction clear. "Excellent. Associates will reach out next week. We'll start small and see how things go." Emma excused herself to powder her nose. The moment she left, Samuel's jovial mask slipped away, replaced by a dangerous intensity. "Hugo," he said quietly, "I hope you understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't a side business you can walk away from. If you get cold feet," Hugo met his gaze steadily. "I'm not a man who makes commitments lightly." "Good," Samuel said, voice low. "Because men who disappoint me tend not to live long." It was a threat wrapped in civility, a warning wrapped in a smile. Hugo filed it away with all the other pieces of the puzzle. Emma returned with perfect timing, her smile bright, eyes sparkling with feigned warmth. "Are you two plotting world domination without me?" she teased. "Just business talk, sweetheart," Samuel replied, slipping back into his grandfatherly role. "Boring stuff that'd put you to sleep." The drive home was quiet. Emma hummed softly, watching the city lights blur past. Hugo's mind raced with possibilities and contingencies. Back at their mansion, Emma disappeared into her walk-in wardrobe to change. Hugo loosened his tie and moved to the window, ostensibly admiring the garden's moonlit silhouettes, but actually scanning for surveillance. Points. That's when he heard it, her voice, muffled but unmistakable, carried through the bathroom door. "I know, Dad." He took the bait perfectly. "No, he suspects nothing. The man's arrogant, he thinks he's playing us." Her tone was cold, ruthless. "Tomorrow night?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes, the warehouse makes sense. He's been living there lately. He's weak, lucky in business. Send the men. Make it look like an accident." Hugo's blood ran cold, but his face remained calm, unreadable. Emma emerged from the bathroom in silk pajamas, the fabric clinging softly to her curves, the faint scent of jasmine trailing behind her. Her expression was carefully crafted. Concerned, loving. "You seem tired, darling," she said, moving close, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Long day. Thinking about your father's offer," Hugo replied evenly. "Big decision." Emma smiled against his chest, the warmth a practiced facade. "I know Dad seems intimidating, but he cares about our future. This could be the opportunity of a lifetime." Hugo kissed the top of her head, marveling at her performance. 10 years of marriage, and he'd never suspected the woman in his arms was planning his murder, and looking forward to it. Maybe it will change everything. He whispered outside. The night held its breath. Tomorrow the game would begin. Before dawn broke over Didsbury, Hugo was already awake, as he had been every morning for the past 15 years. Emma lay beside him, her face serene in the soft morning light, the mask of innocence undisturbed even in sleep. Hugo studied her quietly, struck anew by the depth of her deception. Even now, she bore the appearance of the fragile woman who had once spilled coffee on him outside a cafe, the woman who had captured his heart. He dressed silently and left their Georgian mansion without waking her. Instead of heading to Pierce Construction, Hugo drove to a modest, unremarkable building tucked into Manchester's industrial district. To the casual observer, it looked like just another maintenance depot. To Hugo, it was a fortress. Beneath the building was a secure basement, his private command center, equipped with surveillance gear, encrypted communications, and databases that officially did not exist. Here, he kept files on everyone who had crossed his path in Manchester, including Emma and her father, Samuel Collins. His investigation into Samuel had begun 3 years earlier, triggered by inconsistencies in Emma's stories about her past. What he uncovered was chilling. Samuel Collins was no ordinary businessman. He was the ruthless head of one of the Northwest's most sophisticated criminal syndicates, controlling a vast network of import-export fronts for weapons trafficking and human smuggling. More disturbing still, Emma was not Samuel's biological daughter. She was an adopted asset, recruited and trained from adolescence for long-term infiltration. Emma Osborne was a carefully crafted identity designed to ensnare wealthy marks useful to the Collins organization. Hugo had been her longest and most valuable assignment. 10 years of cultivation, waiting for the moment to recruit or eliminate him. Last night's dinner had marked that moment. His apparent eagerness to join Samuel's operation had sealed his fate. Hugo was too dangerous to recruit. He had to be removed. The irony was exquisite. Samuel and Emma believed they were targeting a soft businessman who'd gotten lucky. They had no idea they were hunting one of the most lethal men the UK's intelligence services had ever trained. As morning light filtered through the blinds, Hugo reviewed footage from cameras he'd discreetly installed around the warehouse months ago. Samuel's men had been thorough, teams of 2, meticulously cataloging entry points and vulnerabilities. They had identified apparent weak spots. What they hadn't seen were the modifications Hugo had made. Reinforced walls capable of stopping armor-piercing rounds, hidden corridors invisible on blueprints, a communications hub able to tap into any city system, and surveillance capabilities rivaling government facilities. At 18 noon, a secure phone rang. A device Emma had never seen, untraceable by any official records. The voice on the line was Roberto Watts, a former Royal Marine sniper who had served with Hugo on classified operations. Hugo, you sure about this? Completely. How fast can you get here? I'm already in town, watching your 6 like you asked. You've got serious heat, 8 vehicles tailing your properties. Roberto was one of 3 former colleagues Hugo had discreetly contacted. Chad Hess, a demolitions expert, and Mark Benjamin, a communications specialist. Men who owed him their lives and could be trusted. Coordinate with Chad and Mark. Full operational readiness by 18:00. Copy that. What's the target? Organized crime syndicate. 8 to 12 hostiles, trained but overconfident. They expect to kill a soft civilian target. Roberto's laugh was grim. They have no idea. Hugo spent the afternoon maintaining his business routine at Pierce Construction while secretly coordinating with his team. Rebecca Lamb, his assistant, called during a briefing. Mr. Pierce, your wife phoned. She wanted to confirm you'll be working late at the warehouse tonight. Hugo smiled. Emma was making sure he'd be exactly where Samuel's men expected. Did she sound concerned? Almost excited, but trying to hide it. At 1700 hours, Hugo left the office and drove to the warehouse, appearing to put in extra hours. He parked in his usual spot and entered through the main entrance, heading to his temporary office on the 2nd floor. What no one saw was the transformation underway. Chad had spent the day activating dormant defensive systems. Mark was setting up secure communications with law enforcement contacts. Roberto was perched in a hidden rooftop observation post, monitoring every approach. At 1900 hours, Hugo's phone buzzed. A text from Emma. *, working late again? Don't forget to eat something. Love you. Asterisk. The message was perfect. Loving concern laced with just enough detail to confirm his location. Hugo replied, asterisk, just finishing paperwork. Home by 10. Asterisk. He meant it, but not in the way Emma expected as darkness cloaked the city. Hugo prepared to become what he'd hoped never to be again. A predator hunting predators. The warehouse was his fortress. Tonight it would be their tomb. At 8:47 p.m., the first vehicle approached the warehouse. A sleek black Range Rover with tinted windows that glided silently past the main entrance before parking 3 blocks away. 7 minutes later, another dark sedan took up position on the opposite side of the building. Hugo watched the feeds from his hidden command center, a room that officially didn't exist on any blueprint. It was straight out of a spy thriller, walls lined with monitors streaming dozens of camera angles, encrypted radios, and tactical maps tracking every movement around the property. We've got movement, crackled Roberto's voice in Hugo's earpiece. Positioned in a concealed sniper nest disguised as part of the rooftop ventilation system, Roberto had an unobstructed view of all approaches. 8 hostiles. Professional. They're staging for a coordinated assault. Hugo studied the thermal imaging displays. Samuel Collins' men operated with military precision, outfitted in tactical gear, carrying standard breach and clear loadouts. Under normal circumstances, they'd wipe out any civilian target with ease. But tonight was anything but normal. Chad, report, Hugo whispered. Defensive systems are fully operational, came the reply. All entry points monitored and controlled. Got enough surprises rigged to stop a small army. Mark Benjamin's voice joined from the communications center. Full electronic surveillance on hostile comms. Tactical radios, night vision, no heavy weapons detected. Hugo smiled grimly. They had come prepared for a simple hit, not a military engagement. 9:15 p.m. The assault began. The lead team moved swiftly, disabling the visible security cameras with practiced efficiency. The main electronic lock clicked open after 30 seconds, exactly as Hugo had programmed. He wanted them inside, where his advantages were absolute. Team 1 is in, Roberto confirmed. For hostiles heading to the main stairwell. Simultaneously, the second team breached the loading dock on the east side, their entry equally smooth. Both teams advanced into Hugo's labyrinthine fortress, unaware they were stepping into a trap. Hugo activated the building's hidden sound system, filling the corridors with the subtle noise of a lone man working late. Keyboard clicks, paper shuffling, occasional coughs. To the intruders, it sounded like an oblivious businessman, unaware of the death approaching. The first team reached the second floor, moving through corridors designed with tactical precision. Every corner offered cover to defenders, every sightline exposed attackers. Both teams are in position, Mark reported. Preparing synchronized breach in 30 seconds. Hugo inhaled deeply, the familiar calm of predator mode settling over him. For 10 years, he had played the role of loving husband and successful businessman. Tonight, he was something else. Execute, he whispered. The warehouse plunged into darkness. The main lights cut out instantly, emergency red lighting flickering on seconds later, enough to disrupt night vision. Simultaneously, hidden electromagnetic pulse devices fired, frying the attacker's electronics. Night vision goggles blinked out. Tactical radios went silent. Electronic weapon sights powered down. What the hell? A voice muttered, cut off abruptly. Then came the acoustic warfare system. Speakers embedded in walls emitted a modulated frequency causing dizziness and nausea to anyone without specially designed ear protection. The first team stumbled, disoriented in the eerie red glow, their coordinated assault unraveling. The second team found themselves funneled into a corridor designed as a kill zone. Trapped and exposed, Roberto, targets in sight, Hugo said calmly. Confirmed. Engaging. The suppressed sniper rifle spoke once, and the team leader dropped silently. Chaos erupted. Hugo moved through secret passages known only to him, emerging behind the second team like a shadow. His knife found the gap between helmet and armor with surgical precision. The fight was over before it began. Within 15 minutes, the warehouse was silent. 8 professional killers had walked in to murder a businessman. Instead, They had met a ghost from their worst nightmares. Hugo stood in his command center, watching tactical displays showing the complete failure of Samuel Collins' Operation Point. Two attackers remained alive, secured in a containment room designed for interrogation. No chance of escape, no outside interference. His secure phone buzzed. Emma's name lit the screen. "Hello, sweetheart," Hugo answered smoothly. "Hugo, thank God you're okay. I just saw reports of an incident at an industrial complex on the south side. It wasn't your warehouse, was it?" Perfectly played concern. Perfectly timed relief. No, love, not mine. Just some industrial accident. I'm fine. Finishing paperwork. Home soon. Thank goodness, Emma said, voice trembling with feigned worry. I was so worried. Hugo smiled in the darkness. Emma and Samuel were about to learn their decade-long game was over. But first, there were questions to be answered and two prisoners who held the keys. The interrogation room was a study in clinical precision. Soundproofed walls, cold steel restraints, and harsh yet controlled lighting designed to break down even the most hardened subjects. Hugo observed the first captive through one-way glass. A man in his early 30s, lean and disciplined, with the bearing of a soldier, Jesse Gregory. Mark's voice came through the comms, reading off the tablet. Former British Army Ranger. 3 tours in Afghanistan, honorable discharge 5 years ago. Since then, private security contracts, all linked to Samuel Collins. Hugo nodded. Samuel had been recruiting veterans, paying handsomely for work that seemed routine until tonight. He entered the room wearing a tailored black suit, carrying a manila folder. To Jesse, he appeared as the successful businessman caught in an impossible situation. Mr. Gregory, Hugo began evenly, I apologize for the circumstances, but I need your cooperation. Jesse's response was textbook military. Name, rank, serial number. Trained to resist, he held his ground. Hugo opened the folder, revealing photographs. Jesse's flat, his girlfriend, elderly parents in a retirement village. Financial records showed payments from shell companies tied to Collins Enterprises. I'm not here to hurt you, Hugo said quietly. But you have a choice. Continue serving a man who sent you into a death trap blindfolded. Or help me make sure Samuel Collins never puts another soldier in harm's way. Jesse's military facade cracked. You're not just a businessman, are you? No, Hugo replied simply. Not even close. The conversation that followed was efficient. Jesse was a good soldier misled by lies, caught in a web of deceit spun by Collins. Christ, Jesse muttered, staring at evidence of trafficking, smuggling, and murder. I thought it was just security work. Collins said you were embezzling from his daughter. That you needed a lesson, Hugo said. No one told you it was an assassination. Jesse believed him. Collins was too clever to recruit soldiers with murder contracts. He spun narratives to justify their actions. The second captive, Kyle Dodson, gave similar testimony. Both men were horrified to learn they'd been pawns in a criminal empire. Hugo made an offer. Vanish with enough money for new lives, or stay and help bring Collins down. Both chose to stay. By 11:30 p.m., Hugo returned to his mansion. He spent the next hour coordinating with Roberto, Chad, and Mark to erase all signs of the night's carnage. By morning, 8 men would be missing without a trace. No bodies, no witnesses, a mystery unsolvable. Emma waited in the living room, draped in a silk nightgown that clung softly to her curves. A glass of red wine rested in her hand, the deep hue catching the lamplight. Her relief at seeing Hugo alive was perfectly staged, but Hugo detected the subtle tells. Tense eyes, a slight quiver in her voice, trembling hands as she embraced him. I was so worried. She whispered, pressing her cheek to his chest. Just took longer than expected, Hugo replied, stroking her hair with affectionate ease. You know how these projects go. They went to bed, Emma curling into him with the practiced intimacy of a decade's marriage. Hugo lay awake, listening to her steady breathing, marveling at her control. Her father's plan had failed spectacularly. 8 men dead, no explanation. Yet she maintained the facade with Oscar-worthy skill. But Hugo felt her tension, the way she never fully relaxed. At 3:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. Hugo watched as she retrieved it carefully, trying not to wake him. The glow illuminated her pale face. The message was brief * package not delivered. No word from delivery team. Advise. * She stared at it long, then typed a reply. * Will investigate in the morning. May need alternate approach. * She deleted both messages, set the phone down, and lay back, but sleep had fled. Her mind raced, unraveling the chaos her father's operation had become. How had 8 professional killers failed to murder one businessman? Where were the men? By dawn, Emma would start making calls, trying to piece together the night's disaster. She would discover that Hugo Pierce had survived an impossible attack. More troublingly, the attackers had vanished without a trace. Within hours, Emma and Samuel would realize their decade-long game was compromised from the start. They would begin to wonder if the mild-mannered businessman they targeted was something far more dangerous. Hugo smiled in the dark. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them face the terrible mistake they'd made. Tomorrow, the real game would begin.